Our minds are our only tool for survival, and thinking critically is a skill which evolved to help us navigate our lives. But Christianity tries to cut off our access to this skill, the only resource we have for self-preservation, by convincing us that reliance upon our own thoughts is wicked. In doing so, will place us outside of God's protection, leading to destruction. Hi everyone, this is Becca with Faith Exposed. Welcome back to my deconversion story. Now we're on chapter 2, which I called Finding My Own Mind. So this is really about the part of the process where I was able to unlock this very important tool I had of critical thinking and analytical thought that I had actually completely shut down from birth due to the indoctrination of Evangelical Christianity. So this was actually a necessary step, a precursor to my deconstruction mode. I actually still had to learn that critical thought was something that I could use, a resource I could access that was valuable. I didn't know this previously. It was completely shut off from me based on a lot of the manipulation tactics of the church. Now I know the people teaching these manipulation tactics aren't necessarily doing it on purpose or with intent. Many of these people are both the victims and the perpetrators. My journey out of Christianity has been really a slow rolling process, each step building upon previous ones in order for me to become free. The general idea proposed by Evangelical Christianity for me was always that women's value is in their virginity, or to what extent they affect men, if they cause them to stumble or if they support them and help them. It was never about having our own agency or our own minds actually being valuable. In the Bible, women are largely told to keep silent, implying that we don't really have thoughts of value to bring to the table. And when I started to realize this isn't the case, it really impacted my life for the better. Not utilizing one's analytical skills leaves a person vulnerable to all forms of manipulation or being taken advantage of. It really brings down the boundary between yourself and the religious institution, so that they can have control. This prevents us from living an intentional and uniquely effective life. Instead of deciding how you want to live, how do you want to respond to things, you are left at the whim of feelings of the Holy Spirit or guidance from other counselors at the church and the leaders who are all men. I share my thoughts and experiences in this chapter because I'm 100% certain these tactics are being used on many, many others, and it can be very helpful just to recognize the manipulation. It took me 26 years and a lot of unique experiences in order for me to be able to see the belief system for what it is. Today I'll discuss how Evangelical Christianity accomplished this, and then how I was able to find these connections on my own. All right, so let's begin chapter 2.
By searching my mind.
This tactic of disconnecting us from our inner selves and the world around us is step number 1 in the book Combating Cult Mind Control. Hassan claims there are 3 steps to gaining control of someone's mind. The first is unfreezing, then changing, and refreezing. Unfreezing means breaking a person down. Changing is when indoctrination is introduced, and refreezing means building someone's new artificial cult identity. The most important part of refreezing, the first step, is denigration of the past self. And in Evangelical Christianity, that would be who you are before being accepted and cleansed by Jesus, which is the changing phase. So this really seems to line up. This is something I may want to do a deeper dive into. I could do a video series. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would be interested in hearing, how this book, Combating Cult Mind Control, is applied to Evangelical Christianity. So how exactly was Evangelical Christianity able to cut me off from my inner voice, my own core moral values, and my analytical thought? Well, let's look at some of the inherent ideas in the religion that are promoted to people at all ages. One idea which gets taught is that basically cause and effect are not occurring in the real world, physical world, but they're occurring in some unknown spiritual realm, and it involves spirits battling each other, and our prayers are considered spiritual warfare, and that this is how we're supposed to effect change, is by praying and reading the Bible, that there's some sort of magic there, rather than analyzing the objective facts about a situation in the real world and deciding how we want to react. Our ability to make choices is really short-circuited because we're given a totally false representation of cause and effect. We're also told that our heart cannot be trusted. The very core of who we are, we can't trust. We can only trust this belief system. So, for example, Jeremiah 17:9 said, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" So that's pretty discouraging. It's really breaking down our trust in ourselves. Then we have Proverbs 3:5-6, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." So we're hearing again, don't trust yourself. Don't be aware of yourself, because our focus needs to be on God instead. We are bad. Then we have 1 Corinthians 1:25. "For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men." God is smarter than you, so don't even try. Interesting, though, I feel like this sort of goes against the more modern idea that God is perfect and all-powerful. It's describing God as having some weakness and some foolishness. And what I've learned from experience in the church is that if you do place any trust in your own mind, people around you will correct you immediately and say, you are having pride like Lucifer. Another major doctrine that's at the core of Christianity is the Great Fall, and Adam and Eve who are said to have caused the great fall of man just because they ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So here we have a strong message that your moral values are no good. So you're being cut off from your own core moral values because you're not supposed to have the knowledge of good and evil. You don't have the knowledge of good and evil. Then we have the story of the Tower of Babel, where people were punished for trying to reach God through their own efforts. So your efforts are useless. Don't even try. Don't take physical action. And of course, heaven is the reward for those who believe. So credulity is rewarded with heaven. Another huge one is the story of doubting Thomas. Thomas is the disciple who required evidence, who wanted to actually see the hands of Jesus before he believed that he was resurrected. And doubting Thomas was chastised for requiring evidence and not simply believing. He was considered evil for asking for evidence and trying to use his own mind. Next we have the verses 1 Corinthians 14:26-40. "The women should keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but should be in submission, as the law also says. If there is anything they desire to learn, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is shameful for a woman to speak in church." Holy cow, so what a strong message that women's voices are not to be heard, that women don't have valuable thoughts to add. This definitely, especially for women, this certainly encourages us to discard our inner voice and not trust who we are. Then we see this idea that the devil is constantly deceiving us, so we can't trust our senses. At any point, it could be just the devil tricking us. So never rely on your own judgment. We're also encouraged to not put thought into the future. Take no thought for tomorrow. Matthew 6:34. "Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself." So we're supposed to only focus on this day and not try to apply our thoughts to the future or plan our lives. Again, this prevents us from living an intentional and effective life. I also often heard the idea that my body is not my own. I am a temple of the Holy Spirit. Since the body is not my own, I'm disconnected from the awareness of myself. So being warned and threatened to not use our critical thought is exactly what we would expect to hear from somebody who wants to manipulate us into belief, and from someone who doesn't have the evidence and the strong reasoning to convince us. So if there really were a God who created us, then he would have gone through a lot of trouble to give us these creative, unique minds. Why would he then want us to not use it? The much better explanation is that Christianity is actually yet another one of these high control groups trying to get a hook into our minds and not looking out for our best interests, but just trying to perpetuate the religious institution. And we see this particularly clearly now that the religious institution is so attached to a specific political party. In order to isolate us from threats to our faith and maintain adherence, Christianity manipulates us to disconnecting from the world and the people around us that are not in line with their teachings. Some teachings that I encountered over and over again in my experience with Evangelical Christianity that separated me from reality and the world around me, and as well as people who might come from different cultures, are as follows. I was taught that the world is evil and I am in the world but not of it, and that Satan lies in anything outside of the church's influence. Even other denominations of Christianity that are deceived by having different doctrines. 1 John 2:15 says, "Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." So again, disconnecting us from the world, breaking down our trust in reality and our senses. I was also told in no uncertain terms that evolution is a lie, a deception from Satan himself. Basically, anything humans perceive about the real world is likely to be a deception from Satan, so we can't trust it. But through their lens of thinking, why would God grant so many superpowers to this Satan character? Satan is given powers almost to the level of God. He can roam the earth freely. He can speak into our minds, given the keys to deceive us. So does God care more about over-empowering Satan than he does saving the souls of his children? I was also really given the impression that anything relevant is occurring in a spiritual realm and not in this earth. So if you want to solve a problem, you look to heavenly spiritual matters. You don't look at objective facts or trust your senses in the world around you. And we can see this depicted right in the Bible. Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." I was told that requiring evidence was a sin and faith is what we needed to use. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, "We live by faith, not by sight." Again, don't trust your senses. Trust what they are telling you about this invisible realm. And we're also commanded to not test God. We aren't allowed to see if he's actually fulfilling his promises. He can throw out 100 promises and doesn't have to fulfill any of them because we can't rely on our own senses to say, "Oh look, he said this and it didn't happen." That logical thinking has been cut off. And this is also spelled out in the scripture. And Deuteronomy 6:16 says, "You shall not put the Lord your God to the test." So when these tactics of disconnecting people from their critical thought, from trusting the world around them or the people in it, and even their own minds, we end up with some pretty severe societal level problems that can be extremely difficult to recover from. We're basically disarming people from using their basic survival instincts that evolved in us and is the whole reason we've been able to come this far as a species. This can lead to a very ignorant population.
Brondo's got what plants crave.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes.
What are electrolytes? Do you even know?
It's what they use to make Brondo.
Yeah, but why did they use them to make Brondo?
Because Brondo's got electrolytes.
After several hours, Joe finally gave up on logic and reason.
So the decision to go against the church's teachings and pursue a higher education, I really attribute to helping me find my mind and ultimately save my life. Having faith caused me to only be able to work these minimum wage jobs because I didn't believe I had intellect, and I didn't think that as a woman I should pursue anything like a leadership role. And I felt it would be a waste of time and a distraction to pursue a 4-year degree, since Jesus could be returning any day and he wouldn't care about me having an education. Why did I decide to pursue a higher level education from the world? I still needed money to survive, and so I was working all of these entry-level jobs, and I was just miserable. It had been several years, and and it just wasn't working for me, so I needed a way out. I was desperate to be treated better and to get more money in return for my time. So I decided to get a practical degree that could help me with this. And this actually went really well for me. I performed very well and I enjoyed it. I was thriving in this higher education setting. If faith is really a virtue more than applying logical analysis is, then I should see better outcomes using faith. If faith is a virtue, then faith should lead to better states of mind, better results than logical analysis. But that's not what I found by a long shot. I got nothing but misery in turn for living by faith, and I just couldn't go on that way. So I told myself I could go ahead and pursue a worldly higher education in accounting. Despite everything I observed previously about my mother doing better, trusting the world instead of faith, I was still under the impression that faith was the way I should live my life. I did decide to take a step in a different direction away from faith, but I did still believe that faith was the right way to go. So I picked up some incredibly valuable pieces of wisdom by attending secular college. This went much deeper than mere accounting. I began to build trust in my own mind and in my moral values. Even in these courses that were completely neutral as far as religious views or worldviews or philosophy, just completely neutral concepts. But the process of starting to rely on my thoughts really built confidence in my own mind and my own moral values. These moral values are what developed in me for a reason and what my ancestors evolved in order to survive. These are the moral values I'm going to put more weight in rather than what a religious institution / political force is telling me is right and wrong. I learned through these accounting courses that the true answer is not always intuitive. Getting to the true answer was lots of hard work and required verification. Facts needed to be tested. Ideas needed to be tested. I also learned that sometimes I could be right while others are wrong. And many times I was actually able to correct my professors who might have incorrectly graded one of my problems wrong. And I was step by step building confidence, and it was so much more empowering because I was on a level playing field. I learned that no matter how strongly worded or persuasive a text is, I don't have to believe it if there's not evidence behind it. I can weigh the degree of my belief against the amount of evidence or the quality of the logic behind a statement. I was freed of so many different superstitions that had kept me trapped. My accounting systems courses taught me that information is only as good as its source, and the source needed to be scrutinized for things such as motivational bias, reliability. So it wasn't too long before I realized that I needed to scrutinize the Bible as the ultimate source of evangelical Christianity. I wondered why God would put us in this environment where we're constantly rewarded for using our logical thought rather than faith, only to, in the end, have there be a big twist where the test was actually that you weren't supposed to think logically, that you weren't supposed to require evidence, and now you're going to be severely punished for not knowing that you were supposed to have faith. It also became clear to me that in a world with limited free will, the idea of punishing people just for the sake of punishment was a pretty barbaric idea. All punishment should have a beneficial purpose to it, such as rehabilitation or some beneficial change in outcome. But really, Christianity promotes the idea of retribution, which is just cruelty, eternal torture that doesn't benefit anyone involved. It's just needless cruelty. At this point in time, I hadn't yet thought it through to the conclusion that these disempowering teachings were more likely to be manipulation tactics rather than truth. I was still under the impression that there was strong evidential reason for relying on the Bible as the source of truth. And I'll discuss more in later videos what those points were and how they came unraveled for me. That's the end of chapter 2. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.